Ashley Stevenson, and I am sitting here with Detroit legend, senior front page editor for the Huffington Post, Phil Lewis. Hi, Phil. Welcome home.
Thank you, thank you.
So we're sitting here downtown Detroit, Campus Marshes. Is this your first time being home since COVID, or have you been back since before?
I think since COVID.
Since COVID?
Yeah, I think so. Well, no, I was here for a wedding sometime in 2020, but I wasn't like down here.
Yeah. So how do you feel like while we just walked around, like how does it feel like being here? I know you're in DC now, but the differences in the city, like we're completely revamping. Does it feel different to you from when you used to live here?
Yeah, so don't judge me, but if all this stuff was down here when I was in high school, I probably would have ended up going to Cass. I'm sorry. I might have thought about it. But no, I left Detroit in 2015.
Okay.
And so none of this was here in 2015, basically. Right. So every time I come home, there's something new, there's something different. And I'm like, wow, like things are just changing, like kind of rapidly.
I love that. And you went to Renaissance,
I did go to Renaissance.
People from Renaissance have a certain like air about them. Between you guys and people that I meet who are cast technicians, it's always like some type of rivalry. So I'm happy that I would have went to high school in Detroit, but I'm happy that I went where I went so that I don't have to be around you guys as constant. So we were talking, and you've been in journalism for 6 years now.
Yeah, about 6 years.
And over these last 6 years, what do you feel like you have learned? Because news is so wildly different than how it was when we were younger. Like I remember my first idea of the news was like Diana Lewis, Rhonda Walker, Carolyn Clifford, Hill Perkins. Yeah. So now with our generation kind of taking on the helms, how does that feel for you?
Yeah, well, I think what I've noticed is that now there's not quite like as a monopoly on the news as there was back then. It's like Channel 7 was Channel 7, Channel 4. When we were growing up, that was pretty much the only source of news you were getting. Like the internet was not really a thing. Like no one was really going to it for that sort of thing now. And so I think what I've learned the most is that, and this is just maybe for burgeoning reporters, people who are emerging reporters, people who are interested, is the importance of creating your own platform, right? Creating your own platform for yourself, right? So you can work for, insert company here, right? You can work for any of them, but what's important is that you have to kind of make your own sort of platform, whether that's making a website, whether that's establishing yourself on some social media platform or some YouTube channel or whatever it is. That's what's important, because as you can see, just yesterday when Facebook and Instagram went down, a lot of people were very nervous. They were like, what's going on? Like, I'm tied to this, but the people who were not that worried were people who had portfolios on websites, right? Like websites weren't going down. Your portfolio's staying there. Exactly. So it's just building out your own platform as a reporter or whatever it is that you're trying to do, editor, whatever it is you want to do, creating your own platform for yourself and establishing yourself a little away from whatever it is, what company you are with, right? Which is a little different from, when we were growing up watching Channel 7 or Channel 4, we associated that person with that place.
Yes,
we did. But now there's so many different avenues you can take, to freelance or, permanence or do whatever it is you want to do, so I think that's probably the biggest lesson.
Yeah, I love that. And I wanted to ask for yourself, because you are a front page editor, how do you consume your news? So I know right now we talk a lot about, obviously, mental health is extremely important.
Yes.
And we are so grateful to be having these conversations about anxiety and depression, and we've survived so much. So when you're constantly kind of engulfed in these news and consuming it, how are you maintaining yourself and your mental health in your space?
Yeah, so I see a lot. I definitely see a lot. I see a lot of different things. Thankfully, I enjoy what I do, but that doesn't mean it doesn't take a toll, and so I try to do different things that I enjoy, and it's important to find things that you enjoy, right? So during the pandemic, I found that I like to hike. I'm in Maryland, in the DC area, where there's, a lot of different nice parks you can hike at, kind of like interesting things you can do with that. I love getting on the scooters and just riding around.
I love that too.
A very nice sort of like thing to do, to chill, and I just kind of relax. I try to find different ways to relax, and I'm not as great with unplugging because I always feel like there's something that needs to be happening.
It's definitely, I think it's a thing for journalists in general. I'm very much so connected to my phone.
You don't want to miss something.
You don't.
Yeah.
I have my notifications on. I wanted to cut them off, but then my anxiety.
Sometimes it's okay. Like I have missed big stories where it's like, I don't think I even need to be in that. Like I didn't need to be in that. But sometimes as journalists, we feel as though we have a responsibility to share our news to our audience and make sure that they know what's going on. They're abreast of all the situations. But you have to take care of yourself first, because otherwise, if you're breaking down, then you can't do anything at all.
No, you're absolutely right. I was thinking about the 6 years that you've been in journalism, and we talked about how you just missed a big story. What do you feel like to date has been like your greatest accomplishment as far as breaking news or sharing a story? Like, what are you most proud of for yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say that my greatest accomplishment thus far is probably winning. I won this award this year, and it was with the National Press Club, and it was a award basically for reporting that we did in South Carolina. So I did it with two of my colleagues at Huff Post. We went to Columbia, South Carolina, and we basically did this special project where we talked with residents of Columbia about the primary. Yes. And it was awesome. We flew a photographer down there.
I remember that.
Yeah, we went down there, and we actually won an award. It was called Black at the Ballot.
Wow.
And it was really great because it was my first time really doing a project where we saw the whole thing through from the beginning stages, trying to figure out who we were going to talk to, flying down there, actually just running into people, just meeting people. And we ran into some amazing people. Like we run into a man who just a formerly incarcerated person who just recently got out, and he was just telling us about how his mindset and how he thinks about voting. And we just ran into him like on the street, and I just like reached out to him. I was like, "Hey, you look like you know something from you're from Columbia, right?" And I just struck up the conversation, and it was really great, and it was just really affirming to win that award, because all of us we sometimes have a bit of imposter syndrome. We're like, oh, I don't know if this is for me or journalism, I don't know. So it was actually just, not to say that awards are like, this amazing thing, but it is nice to win it. So that was a big thing.
Well, congratulations, first of all. That's really dope. I wanted to talk to you about that. Sharing stories. I know we both share this love and this passion for sharing stories, especially about our communities and how it impacts us. And there's so many things going on. And in this era of fake news, and our generation, we have had a lot of access to a lot of resources.
Yes.
So we have so many sources of news coming at us, and then we have fake news. So what advice would you give people who find themselves so leery about what they should trust? Like, do you have any fact-finding tips that you would say, like, this is how you could consume news and try to get the best information possible without being overwhelmed? Because one thing I don't want people to do is to download this theory that everything that we say is not real, or we're just trying to, freak them out, but we're actually wanting to keep them informed. So what would you suggest that they do going forward, like to make sure that the news that they're getting is accurate?
Yeah, I would suggest, it's funny you just said that, because it's kind of, we have to do our own research about the outlets that we are, reading, right? And so, you can read a bunch of different stories, different places, but they all might have different takes.
Yes.
And so it sort of depends on what you're looking for. Like it's tough because there are just so many different outlets now, right? There are so many different outlets. Back in the day, you had CBS, ABC, and NBC telling you what it is. MSNBC. Yeah, and then even those two are newer, right? Like those two are newer. So you kind of have to do your own diligence, like who is citing what, right? Like if you're looking at a story, and you have to see like where are they citing this, like, because there are a lot of aggregated stories now. and people are aggregating them from all sorts of different places. You want to click on that link. Where is it coming from? Who is this like random blog? Like, where is it coming from?
Yeah.
So you want to at least check the site, like citation of stories, and because we don't always get it right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that we are, fake news, right? Like, there's a difference between correction, right, and then just blatant fake news, right? And so, unfortunately, we have a surplus of people looking for information on YouTube University, and doing all this, research that they claim that they're making, but it's important to see what you're actually reading. Like, look at what you're reading. Look at the date. Did somebody share this 10 years ago? Because sometimes I see people sharing stories on Facebook.
I see so many old stories on Facebook that are like 10 plus years ago.
10 years ago.
Like, why are you guys sharing it like it's brand new?
Yeah, because people are generally just reading the headline. So if there's anything you want to do, you want to read past the headline.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Listen to Phil, you guys. Read past the headline.
Read past the headline.
Please. Because I've clicked on headlines before, and it's literally a completely made up story.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times people run into that, and it kind of builds this distrust between us and our audience, and we don't want to do that.
Right.
Another thing is, you and I are the same age, and we have survived the blackout of Detroit. Detroit had a blackout. We have now survived kind of a tumultuous presidency, a pandemic.
Yep.
And now we're still in the helms of a pandemic. Now we have people who have certain phobias and are afraid. What advice would you give the next generation after us about weathering the storm and still moving forward?
Yeah, well, I don't know about you, but I'm tired of living through life-changing, monumental events.
Earthquake?
No, seriously. We just wrote a really great article about dealing with like anxieties on Huff Post. I wish I could remember the title, but honestly, if you just type in Huff Post and like anxiety or phobias, we have a really great life section that all sorts of like stories will come up on how to deal with it. But anyway, the story was actually focused on climate change.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of people who are nervous about having children now, right? Because they're like, I don't want to, bring a child in this world and the earth is going to be on fire in like 20 years or something like that, right? So that story has a lot of really good advice for people who are just kind of nervous. They're nervous about where the world is going. I would say that's why it's important to kind of log out. You want to log out for a little bit, at least, and find things that you enjoy doing, because I'm not saying logging out means that things will disappear or anything like that, but it's not good for anyone's mental health, like no matter who you are or how much content you're consuming, to just consistently be getting this stream. Like even when you think about the content curators on Facebook, and their job is to see all of this wild stuff on Facebook and then delete it. That job, there's been stories about how those people have been just low mental health. Like it's really bad for people like that for anybody to go through seeing these things all the time. And we see it like in constant stream on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, whatever. So just log out.
Yeah.
Like just log out. Like that's my thing. Just log out.
Guys, we just gotta unplug. I love that because you're so with the times, and of course we have to talk about your presence on Twitter, which it seems like you're pretty logged in on Twitter. But before we get there, I just wanted to ask you, Bill, what is the best advice anyone has ever given you? Like, what piece of wisdom sticks out in your mind?
The best advice someone has given me, probably in relation to journalism, I will say, is to not be afraid to cover race. Right. So when I first got into journalism, I remember a writer or reporter told me, you don't want to get typecast as the black journalist that writes about black issues.
Wow.
And I was just kind of like, I'm from Detroit. Like that's what I like. You're from the blackest city in America, right? So, but they were trying to give me advice on like, okay, you're covering like national stories now, right? Like you don't want to be typecast as a race reporter, right? And it's funny because now a majority of my stories deal with race, right? Because what I've learned is that you cannot avoid the issue of race. Like, that's just something that we deal with every day.
It is.
It's persistent. And so another reporter told me, like, that is this horrible advice.
Yeah.
Right? What you think is interesting and pertinent, and the stories will bear itself out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this horrible advice.
Stick to your passions.
Yeah, stick to your passions. And really kind of just be yourself with this sort of thing, like being with writing, and honestly, being myself is what did lead to, I think, my Twitter presence and my success, because I think you kind of have to figure out what it is that makes you different in a sea of voices. Like, there are a sea of voices now online. Everybody has things to say and something to say. Yep.
Yeah.
But only you are your own thoughts. Like, you have your thoughts, right? And no one can kind of take those away. So,
are you ever afraid to be canceled?
Be canceled?
Because cancel culture is so prevalent. Like, do you ever, before you put something out, are you like, ooh, I don't know,
Well, for myself, I always, not always, okay, let me not say always, but I try to at least give myself 15 seconds to think about something before I send it.
Wow.
So, I would say like 95%, like 15 seconds is usually enough for me to be like, okay, is this, I can think of all the consequences. What are the consequences behind me sending this tweet? Yeah. It's about 15 seconds. So I'm like, and if the consequences are too great, I'm like, drafts. So if my drafts ever go exposed, it's over. No. No.
Looking out. So I've printed off some of my favorite tweets from you.
Okay.
Handy dandy printout. Okay,
yes.
So this first one. Will it Jada's marriage counselor when it's time for another appointment?
Oh, yes. So, first of all, the last time somebody's read my tweets like this to me, I was almost fired. So I'm just going to say that.
Well, there's nothing I felt. I went through, I was like, I hope this is nothing I feel like. But I'm like, keep put them out.
No, they're out. Yeah, once they're out there, they're out there. And I don't read my mentions.
Okay.
I don't really read my mentions.
Wow, that's interesting.
I don't really read my DMs.
That seems like a form of self-care.
Yes, it is, because honestly, there's just so much on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't read it. So I'm sorry if people are like sending me messages. Sometimes I'll take a look, but I generally don't read my mentions, because it's usually just a lot of people just arguing about stuff probably I didn't even say. They're just arguing with each other.
Yeah, I love reading your newsletters too. I subscribe to those, and those are really dope.
The newsletter. I need to get back to that actually.
Yeah, that was cool.
But so this was trending, and if I see something trending and I have like thoughts on it, I'll just put it out there and see what people have to say.
Yes. Then yesterday, so Twitter and Facebook and Instagram went down, and my first favorite tweet was when you talked about how people, because I'm an Instagrammer more than a tweeter.
Yes.
So I was definitely one of those people that was on Twitter that was kind of like
what's going on? Yeah.
Who do I talk to?
Where are my people?
Who do I talk to? Right. And so I love this. It says Nigerian scammers after WhatsApp went down. Before you all start, my full name is Lawal.
Okay. First and foremost, sometimes you have to see where the line is. I rightfully got dragged for that tweet, and I have no qualms about it. I definitely deserved it. I deserved it. That's the tweet where it's like, I'm like, did I really want to send that? I sent it. Now I know where the line is, so I won't do that again.
It's hilarious because I get a lot of random, scammers on WhatsApp, and there's always something bizarre, you know? And I had a guy, I don't know if it was a guy or a bot, I'm assuming, but he sent me a WhatsApp like a couple weeks ago, and it was like, I love you, baby. Please send $500 immediately.
That's important. And so that's what I know WhatsApp for, but obviously people use WhatsApp to keep up with their family.
They do.
Right? And so
if you're out of the country, it's very helpful.
It's super helpful.
But for the most part, people are getting scammed.
People are getting scammed over there, So whenever I'm tweeting, I try to take into consideration that a joke that I make might be funny to like my immediate friends or like people that I think, but then I have to realize there are 170,000 people who are really that this tweet can see, So there are people who are going to find some of my tweets hilarious. There are people who are like, this guy is terrible. So I should just be okay with that.
We talked about that too. Like, we're going to offend somebody, and also too, I really feel like people from Detroit, we have a different type of sense of humor. That's true, and it's kind of dark.
If you grew up in DPS, there's nothing you can say about me that I'm offended by. There's nothing.
Like, there's pretty much like
I've been roasted all types of ways.
When they say Detroit versus everybody. It's really a thing.
Yes.
It's like you really have to have tough skin to be here.
Yes.
Here's another personal fave. You retweeted from the Washingtonian that a new report has crowned D.C. the best city for dating. Yes, you read that correctly.
Yes.
To which you replied, the lies.
So that was just kind of just me being silly, because technically DC is a great place for dating. Like, there's all sorts of different things to do.
Yeah.
Everybody in those mentions were talking about the quality of the people being dated, the quality of the dating pool there.
Yeah.
So I was just being funny on that. But
dating as a journalist, do you find it easier or harder? We talked about being in the media, like you need somebody that's kind of understanding. Hours can be long. It might be tough for you to unplug. So do you feel like your career at all makes it easier or a little bit harder? Probably easier to meet people.
Yeah, it's definitely easier. You meet all sorts of people, but it's a bit harder because the hours are strange. Like, I have very strange hours.
Yeah.
And sometimes there are points where I have to break out my computer. Like, right there. Like, you could be on a date and you have to break out your computer. So that can be difficult if the person is not necessarily understanding.
Yeah, I can see that. Definitely a thing. And then, we have to get into this.
Yes.
Nicki Minaj, a couple weeks ago.
My biggest fan.
Right. She's clearly your biggest fan. First, I just always have to say I love how informative, and then, like I said before, I love there's always a hint of sarcasm. So for those of you who don't know, Nicki Minaj tweeted about her reason for not being able to attend the Met Gala, and she said, "My cousin in Trinidad won't get the vaccine because his friend got it and became impotent. His testicles became swollen. His friend was weeks away from getting married. Now the girl called off the wedding. So just pray on it and make sure you're comfortable with your decision, not bullied." So
in journalism, if you say something like, if you hear someone say, "My cousin in X, Y, and Z," and you cannot get in touch with the cousin, then it might be okay to be like, it might be okay to be a little skeptical.
Yeah,
it might be okay.
Just a smidge.
So, because I know TMZ was looking for the cousin. TMZ's been looking for the cousin.
TMZ's looking. We're all looking. Where's the cousin?
I'm trying to hear from the cousin.
My cousin's friend.
My cousin's friend. Exactly.
So we know with that.
So it's just It's you cannot prove it. You can't prove it. Yeah. So
I love that you replied to her and you talked about the publicist basically putting out the fire, and so then she said, "Take the poll." And you asked her, was this the research?
I mean, because look, research can happen in a lot of different ways. So I was being facetious, but yeah, she did not like that.
She didn't respond. She was not very happy. Nicki replied to Phil, who I love that you're so unbothered by this situation. She replied, "You've been tweeting about me for an hour. You're not tired.
It was an hour.
Mad I'm my own person. Mad the internet can't scare me away. It's always someone who looks like you. Polls are very much a part of research, real experiences, open dialogue, etc. Go put on your red nose clown team."
Yes.
So you're clearly not wearing a red nose.
Yeah.
When you read that, you're laughing. Did you laugh? Like, how did you feel?
I laughed, yeah.
This mega star is going back and forth with you over a story that, to be honest, any self-respecting person would be like, I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know about this. I laughed, but I don't read my mentions, so I didn't really, because they were in my mentions. The Barbs were in my mentions for like 2 weeks. After that, they were like, get a job. They were like, get a job. And I was like,
doing it.
I was like, this is kind of my job, but also the irony between the Barbs telling me to get a job. I'm like, okay.
All right.
All right. I think that was probably the funniest part.
Lord and Savior.
Yeah, like this. Well, but the issue with Nicki though is that Nicki has a serious platform, right? Like the Barbs are serious, right? So if she had come out and said, "Hey, I got the vaccine. It was fine. No one died." That would have had a huge impact on her following, right? Like, that's a huge impact. She has like millions of followers.
Yes.
So I don't know. I am of the mind that do no harm.
Yes.
Like, if you don't want to get the vaccine, like, you probably just should have just maybe kept that to yourself.
Yes.
Instead of undermining all the nurses and doctors and physicians, all these people who are like healthcare workers who are like working not only ridiculous hours dealing with people who are, in ERs and ICUs. But also they're doing what they can to push out the information and the right information about the vaccine.
Yeah. And so did you feel like it was kind of your civic duty, like of morality, to take this on? Were you nervous at all?
To take on the battle of Nicki Minaj.
Right. Did you take on the barbs?
I didn't respond after that, actually, because I don't argue online.
Yes.
So after she said that, I just let it alone.
Right. And I love that you guys posted from the Huff Post the next day that the insert nut emoji are safe, because it was so huge. I remember Apple News actually was the one who brought the notification to my phone, and then it was I kind of read the back and forth from you guys' push alert that came out, and I was like, and then I saw you tweeted takes a bow, and I sent
that push alert out because people were curious. Like that actually was trending for like 3 days.
Yeah, it was a really, really big story, and I think at this point in time, I always wonder, do we feel compelled to say something to people when we feel like it could be a great detriment to the community?
I think that's our job. Like, service journalism is important.
Yes.
What we do. What we do is get information out to the masses, right? And so I would prefer to get stories out that are about taking this vaccine so people can be protected. People can, I don't think people are saying it's a cure. People are just saying, hey, this can lessen your chances of ending up intubated or in ICU or anything like that. Like that's all we can do, right? And so it is annoying when celebrities undermine that. So you see all the basketball players and all these people who are like undermining that. It is frustrating because we're really just trying to help people stay alive, right? Yeah.
And I love that a couple of days ago, I don't know if you saw when LeBron was asked about the vaccine. I loved his approach to it. He was like, I know what I did for my family, do whatever is best for yours, but I don't think it's of any of our duties to push anything on anybody. And so I appreciated his approach to it. He didn't shame anybody, but he wasn't too aggressive with his approach. And so I think in this situation, it would have been different if she just expressed her, not wanting to get the vaccine versus her sharing such a story where there's so much
ridiculous
information.
Story.
Information going around about being infertile and not being able to have children. That's something really scary. And then somebody's relationship falling apart. So I was really proud of you for doing that. So thank you. And then this is also a personal favorite. It's just from Bow Wow.
Yeah, Bow Wow. Shad Moss.
Shad Moss,
yes,
right.
Shad
Moss. Shad. So he said, yo, Angela Simmons, I'm not playing with you no more. What's up? What we doing? And you said, this could have been a text.
Because it couldn't have been a text. Like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on here? Like, you got an album coming out or something? Like, what is...
So what advice would you give to anybody? So you don't check your DMs.
Not really, no.
You don't check your mentions.
No, not really.
How do you suggest a guy in 2021 shoot his shot? Like, what would you say?
Shoot his shot.
That's fine.
Okay. Shoot his shot. I would say. I don't know. Shoot a shot. I would say just before shooting a shot. I'm not a relationship expert. This was not in the script. No. I would say I would say being straightforward and then. I don't know. Wow. I'm rarely stumped in interviews. This is something else. Okay, yeah. No, I would say just be straightforward and approach this person respectfully.
Okay, I love that. It's a little, we're supposed to be socially distancing.
Yeah, so it's hard.
It's a little weird, but no, I like that approach. Be forward, be respectful, and that's the Lewis's advice.
That's my advice.
In 2021.
Yes.
I feel the same way for ladies. How do you feel about ladies shooting their shot?
Oh, I'm all for it because guys are oblivious. Men are oblivious, or maybe it's just me.
Right. I think so too. I think sometimes I tell people, as a journalist, I ask a lot of questions naturally. So I feel like I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, but I will say, oh, what was that like?
Right.
What was like growing up for you? So I would say, ladies, don't be afraid to shoot your shot. And weird people are winning right now.
Yeah.
Right. I remember growing up, when I told people I wanted to be like the field that I wanted to go into and things like that, it was kind of like, you know, weird. I was not super popular, so I wanted to encourage everybody like with similar upbringings. I know you talked about how you went to DC and you just drove yourself there and you kind of grinded your way to the top.
Yes.
So I just want to keep encouraging people to do that. So if you have like any last words you want to share with our audience or just with the city of Detroit, like, you know, as we are coming up and revitalizing our community after being so hit by COVID, and, you know, we're still struggling with getting the numbers down, and we are having various surges. Like, if you want to leave any encouraging words to your people, you know, back home, let us know.
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid to take a risk. Don't be afraid to be yourself and do things that you want to do. I have no idea what I would be doing today if I didn't take that risk and go over to Huff Post for that fellowship in DC for 3 months, you know, and taking that risk, it changed my life, right? Like, there's a lot of different things that could have happened. You know, I could have just ended journalism there. I could have ended after the 3 months and just, you know, did something else. But sticking with it, even when I was very frustrated writing my first stories and getting my first corrections back from my editor, who was saying basically in so many words that this is garbage, you know, sticking to it and, you know, not being afraid of being rejected or getting things wrong, and just sticking with it would probably be my advice. So if you are looking to freelance, if you're looking to start a business, if you're looking to just do something outside of your comfort zone, please let this be your step. Step outside the comfort zone and do that, and do what makes you happy.
Thank you. Yes. It was a pleasure, Phil. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.